Good afternoon, everyone. Official charges have now been filed against the man accused of stabbing his new wife to death, then driving 200 miles to hide from police in a Fargo apartment. 44-year-old James Nyanta is now charged with second-degree murder and remains in custody in Cass County until he can be extradited back to the Twin Cities area. If convicted, he faces up to 40 years. Champlin police say his wife, 35-year-old Pichu Yates, was found just after 9:30 p.m. Monday lying in a yard. Court documents say her husband was under investigation for a criminal sexual conduct case, so Yates and her children had moved out of the family home and were staying with family in Champlin. Yates also had a no-contact order out against him, according to documents. An autopsy found Yates died from multiple sharp force injuries to her head and chest. 15 garages are seriously damaged following a fire near West Acres Mall. Officials are still trying to figure out how it started. It happened early this morning at 4240 17th Avenue South. A damage estimate hasn't been determined. New for you here at 4, a teen was seriously injured when they flipped their ATV in Beltrami County. Police say Sunday afternoon, the 14-year-old driver was traveling along Highway 72 when they came upon an area that had been washed away by a recent snowmelt. The ATV rolled off the 2 to 3 foot ledge, throwing the teen. The driver was flown to Hennepin Medical Center for treatment. Their condition has not been released. Well, we're back to winter today, but the weather may be looking up this weekend. Hutch is here with the first look. Hutch?
I'm right there with you. This is some heavy, wet, shoveling snow, too. Take a look at what it's done to trees. So many of you shared pictures. By the way, we've got a special section on our website that has these pictures rolling through. But Marlis, thank you for sharing that. And you know what? Tail of the tape. How much did you get these kids out measuring? This is in the Westbury Township area north of Detroit Lakes. Jen, thanks for sharing your photo. Thanks to all of you. 9.9 inches reported in the Lake Ida area, Lake Park 9.4, 9 in Rolog, a lot of 8-inch readings, including out in McLeod and Cormorant. Lakes country really hit hard. Dunvilla 7 inches. And old Frankie keeping his eyes on the snowfall out there. Fargo Moorhead seeing right at 4 inches here at Valley News Live. Ogama 6 inches, 6.5 in Abercrombie. So a lot of snow fell out there in the Southern Valley as forecast, and the wind continues to blow. So our challenge is moving forward tonight. Wind and cold temperatures, wet roads, slushy roads will begin to freeze over. So take things slow. Too many accidents already. We still have snow falling central parts of Minnesota, clearing out to the far west. Gusty wind really blowing at over 35 miles per hour at times, still close to 40 here in the Red River Valley. Temperatures below freezing already, so it will be slippery. Take it slow. You'll do just fine. That wind does not die down this evening or into the overnight. So a cold night, temperatures slipping into the 20s in the Southern Valley, 20s in the Northern Valley, although you don't have as much snow in Grand Forks and parts of the Northern Valley. Your hour-by-hour forecast shows improvement. I can't wait to share it with you in a few minutes.
You called this one, Hutch. Thanks for warning us. I was hoping it would miss us. I really was crossing my fingers, and you nailed it. All right, thanks. Graduation rates dipped during the pandemic, and significant gaps by race and class persist, according to new data released today by the Minnesota Department of Education. The 4-year graduation rate was 0.5% less than in 2020. Researchers say it's mostly driven by a small increase in the dropout rate. Some groups of educators in the state are putting pressure on lawmakers to allocate some of the budget surplus to public education and to work toward resolving inequities. President Biden is looking to increase the mining of critical minerals for electric car batteries. The order, employing the Defense Production Act, would provide a substantial financial incentive to develop a domestic supply chain for electric cars, enabling a shift away from gas. The president believes greater federal support for alternatives to fossil fuels would reduce the leverage of Vladimir Putin and others on matters of U.S. national and economic security. Police in Israel are ramping up security after another deadly attack, the third this week. 5 people were killed in last night's shooting rampage. Tina Kraus reports from London.
Residents run for cover as the gunfire keeps coming. Cell phone video shows a man armed with an assault rifle unleashing terror Tuesday night in an ultra-Orthodox neighborhood near Tel Aviv. This woman says the shooting didn't stop. Our house was shaking. When it was over, 3 Israelis and 2 men from Ukraine were dead.
Police found him, shot him, killed him, and stopped this massacre.
Police say the attacker was a Palestinian, reportedly working a construction job in the area. Security forces raided a West Bank village, arresting a handful of possible accomplices. It's Israel's third deadly attack in a week. Police say the other killings were carried out by Palestinian citizens of Israel inspired by ISIS. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas, who met this week with U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, condemned the killings and warned against escalation when the region is striving for stability. Israel's prime minister called it a new wave of terrorism and vowed to fight it with an iron fist. Tina Kraus, CBS News.
The violence comes during a sensitive time for the region, with the holy month of Ramadan approaching alongside the Jewish Passover and Easter. Russian forces are still striking today, even though the Kremlin had said it would pull back from the capital city of Ukraine. U.S. officials say they're skeptical that it's an actual pullback and believe it's more of a redeployment to other areas. Comes as Ukraine has submitted a proposed framework for a peace deal that includes assurance it will not join NATO as long as its security is guaranteed by a group of nations, including America. Today, President Biden announced that the U.S. will give another $500 million in direct aid to Ukraine. Earlier this month, the U.S. Congress approved spending up to $13.6 billion in humanitarian and military aid. The Biden administration has now spent $2.5 billion of that total so far. While tensions escalate between Russia and the U.S., astronauts from the two countries are keeping a cosmic peace. This morning, an astronaut from Minnesota came back to Earth, catching a ride on a Russian capsule. Mark Strassman reports.
Touchdown. The Russian Soyuz capsule landed in Kazakhstan. That smiling American astronaut, Mark Vande Hey, along with two Russian cosmonauts. Is that my hat? Vande Hey spent 355 days at the International Space Station, longer than any other American in a single mission. He returns to an altered political landscape, with Russia now at war in Ukraine. But up in space,
Station, this is Houston.
Crews float above the hostility.
Are they aware of what's going on Earth? Absolutely. But the teams are professional.
Have ignition and liftoff.
For 2 decades and counting, Russians and Americans have lived and worked together in space. NASA's administrator expects that partnership to continue.
We have our problems with President Putin on Earth.
If he pulled the plug on this tomorrow, would the whole thing be at risk?
If they abandon the space station, we'd manage. We'd figure it out. But we don't anticipate that. It's survived all these years. It's not going to stop now.
But just last month, Dmitry Rogozin, the head of Russia's space agency, implied the Russians might abandon ship. He demanded ISS partner nations lift their sanctions, tweeting, "Who will save the ISS from an uncontrolled deorbit and fall into the United States or Europe?" Scott Kelly commanded the ISS for 3 missions.
If Putin pulls out, could the Americans alone make it work?
It wouldn't be easy. Is it impossible? I would say no.
For now, in orbit, it's space business as usual. Mark Strassman, CBS News, Atlanta.
The U.S. wants to prolong the life of the space station to 2030. Russia has yet to commit past 2024. Today, the Biden administration is rolling out COVID.gov, what they say is a one-stop website that'll help people in the U.S. access COVID tests, vaccines, and treatment, along with status updates on infection rates. It comes as the highly transmissible BA.2 Omicron variant is now the dominant strain here in the U.S. For more than 2 years now, health officials have been warning people not to go on cruises, but today the CDC decided to give them the green light. The CDC says it's best to be a vaccinated vacationer, adding you should research how each cruise line handles public health measures. Every year, tens of thousands of children are hospitalized and hundreds die from a common respiratory virus called RSV. Now researchers are testing what could be the first immunization against the deadly illness. A recent study found a single dose of nirsevimab was nearly 75% effective against serious RSV infections. Devin Lindsay's 10-month-old daughter is taking part in the study.
I had spoken to a lot of my friends have young children, and some of them have unfortunately gotten RSV before, and they've been hospitalized or just been sick. One day it's going to be really cool to tell Cameron, like, she was a part of this study that's going to help hundreds of thousands of children.
Researchers say if the drug receives FDA approval, it could be available as soon as 2023. Nurse Redonda Vaught was found guilty of criminally negligent homicide after she gave a patient the wrong medication, resulting in his death. She told the doctor immediately and filed a full report per protocol. That verdict and the fact that Vaught was charged at all worries nurses and patient safety groups that say they've worked for years to move hospital culture away from cover-ups, blame, and punishment and toward the honest reporting of mistakes. A 2016 study by Johns Hopkins Medicine found that more than 250,000 people die every year because of medical error, making it the third leading cause of death in the U.S. Vaught now awaits her sentencing. She could see up to 8 years behind bars.